Hey folks, this is FromSoftware here, bringing you episode 2 of AC Talks, a video series where I basically go in depth on pretty big topics about the Armored Core community and the game series. So for this episode, I'm going to be talking about the state of the community, the uncertain future, and what happens for us next. Now, this is going to be a bit of an interesting episode, not only because of the topic, but the fact that I actually already covered this. I actually completed this episode back in early May, but I decided not to release it just because I didn't like the quality of it. And also, shortly after I completed that episode, there was a lot of stuff that was happening that I didn't get to cover. So this is technically take 2. And at the very least, you guys will be able to hear a lot more stuff. And I guess in some ways, you get a more realistic perspective than if you had gotten this back about 2 months ago. So this topic is based a little bit on the AC Talks I've done on Twitter a few times, talking about the community and what we've done. So just to give you some background, the AC community has been around for close to 20 years now. And for the past 10 years has been in a downward spiral. The last golden age we had was during the AC3 Silent Line area. And from that point onward, we've kind of seen small decreases from Nexus to LR, not only in the community, but in sales. Still not a bad thing, though, as the community was still pretty strong overall. Now, when we hit 4th Gen is when we got a big change, where as the game was released and as people started to playing it, there seemed to be kind of a fracture in the community on whether they liked the game or not. And this was so bad that it actually pretty much destroyed the community of that time. Most people either split up among fan sites, or most of them moved on to other games or just forgot about AC. And that is kind of the situation we're in now, as from Armored Core 4 onwards, we kind of see the same trend of activity in the community just keep going down, each time getting smaller and smaller. Now, current date, July 2017, it's still going down because we haven't had a new AC game in close to, I believe, 4 years now, and overall the community just in general hasn't been doing well. So we've had a pretty fair drop in content creation. We have fewer numbers of content creators, and it seems like most of the things that are created, 90% of them are on YouTube. And this is talking just about the non-JP community, so North America, Australia, Europe, basically any activity outside of Japan. And of the content that is created, there's very little support from the community. If you actually do a search, most videos will have less than 10 views on average. Most will have under 100 subscribers or be of substantially low quality. And most of them tend to be Let's Plays. There's not a whole lot of diversity in the content. So overall, we're just seeing not a whole lot from our community. Now, we do have some exceptions. We do have Buster TBM, who will soon be hitting 1,000 subscribers, which is a pretty big feat considering that most channels that are Armored Core centric tend not to be that big. And then we have a few smaller ones. We have Moody Data. He's got about 400 to 500. We have Mo Cyan, who does mainly Armored Core Verdict Day videos. And then we have Sparrow and myself, I myself do Verdict Day only. And then Sparrow, who does a mixture of it. When it comes to our community spots, overall, we're pretty on the downside here. So in terms of Facebook, our biggest source of activity is the Armored Core's gamers group. However, I've noticed that we've had decreasing activity even with increasing numbers of people joining the group. Now, there's a lot of reasons for this, but I've noticed this that's been happening since about March, and it's kind of just been going downwards. So there's a few possible reasons for that. The first one is there was a change of rules around that time on how people posted, because one thing that we noticed is that a couple of people were just basically spamming the forum with dozens upon dozens of their posts within the same day, and it was just pushing down everyone else's stuff. So none of theirs would get the visibility, and we'd only see those few people. Some of these people didn't like it, so they left, and some of them, they just stopped overall. So that's possible, one reason. But the other reason is a little while back in April and kind of going into May, we had a conflict among a pair of admins. I'm not going to details to what happened, but basically it resulted in a fair bit of drama and a split within the Armored Core Gamers group moderating staff, and it partially contributed to some of the downturn in activity as a result. And on top of that, there was further conflict with a few of these people as well, not just the admins, but a few other ones. And as a result, the ensuing drama, the conflict, had basically destroyed the progress that the group had made in the past 2 years. So pretty much the people we had brought in, the activity we created, the content, most of it by that time had kind of just faded out into oblivion. So there were pretty big losses there. The Discord, there's about 4 to 7 groups out there, but most of them are pretty small. I would say last time I checked, most of them had less than maybe 20, 30 members, and I think half of them only had about maybe 10 or 15. Overall, they're not super active, particularly when it comes to Armored Core. Most of the times they're talking about other stuff, and probably a big one is that these Discords tend not to be super friendly, so there's not a lot of openness towards new players. So most people you will see in there are kind of the same 4 or 5 veterans who kind of just go where there may be activity, and sometimes they stay and sometimes they don't. When it comes to Reddit, it recently just hit 1,400 readers, but there's still very little activity. A handful of people post a week, maybe 1 or 2, but for the most part, it's mainly just my posts. So overall, pretty inactive. Twitter's made some small gains, but overall, the activity increase is insignificant. It's not enough where a lot of these people know each other, are contacting each other, or basically even posting or twittering about Armored Core itself. It's, for the most part, just dominated by the Japanese players. AC fan sites across the board are inactive. It's kind of suffering the same problem as Discord. They're either not usually talking about AC or even so they're not talking about AC, and in the cases where there even is talk about AC, it's so infrequent. It happens maybe like once a month or once a week if you're lucky. So overall, we're pretty unorganized, and there's very little cross communication between the groups. So people on Reddit, on Twitter, on YouTube, they don't go to the other places or communicate with the other people. I've noticed this with Discord, I think, is a big one. A lot of the veteran players don't really like to use the other social media. Sometimes they'll hop in, but it's not very frequent. I know the YouTube people tend to just stay there. Buster TPM's got a lot of people, but it doesn't seem like they visit a lot of the other fan sites or forums or anything like that. So that's kind of our situation right now. Although the next big question you probably want to ask if you're listening is, why does any of this matter? So the big thing is, community is important when it comes to Armored Core, because a strong community grows. It invests in itself, and it does better, and it basically, when it becomes strong, it basically just keeps on going upwards. So there's 2 reasons why this is important. The first one is external. FromSoftware is a business, and AC is a product. A product that doesn't sell well eventually stops being sold. We need to be giving them a reason to keep making AC. A stronger and bigger community means that there's a higher chance for better sales and incentive for the developer and publisher to give more support and basically to invest more into the game. If you have no community, you have no sales, and you have no support. And eventually, you have no games. Now, the internal reasons, and this is probably the more important one. Community is important because, for the most part, the community of Armored Core is what has kept it alive for so long. Kind of like what I was saying earlier, a strong community invests in itself, and it survives without needing external help. A bigger community and a stronger community means that there's more content, more people to play with, more events, and more activities, and that just keeps on building on itself over time. A key thing in that area is that it also brings in new people because they're seeing things that they would be interested in. The game, the people, and the content that's being created. Because one thing I've noticed when it particularly comes to game nowadays is that the content is not just the game, so not just playing it, but also everything around it. So the people who are part of it, so think about any other games you follow, the personalities, the competitive players, and so on and so forth. And those are very strong incentives and reasons for people to keep joining the community. And it's important because communities need new people. They need new blood in order to just keep on growing. If you have no new people, then you have no growth. So basically, there are many, many reasons why we do need to try to figure out how to solve our situation. Also, our uncertain future. So, Armored Core is right now in the middle of a purgatory. And the reason for this is FromSoftware. There seems to be a lack of interaction between us and them in the past 5 years or so, and you know what, maybe even a little longer than that. They've not really talked about the series very much, with the exception of a few interviews which never fully got clarified. For the Armored Core the 20th anniversary, which was on July 10th, they didn't really do anything for that. There was no social media interaction or activity, and the only thing they really did for that day was retweet a survey by Dengeki, which was a little bit odd, but I guess it's something. But overall, there's not really been a whole lot from them. Everything has been pretty much Dark Souls, Dark Souls, Dark Souls. And there also hasn't been a clarification on AC6. There was no showing at E3. And since the initial interview and its mistranslation, they haven't really fully talked about or clarified the entire situation. But personally, my biggest concern isn't with AC6, but rather how the community has been taking it. Because it seems like a lot of people are putting way too much faith in Armored Core 6. And that's not something we want to do, because we've kind of seen with the past 4 games that sometimes it doesn't always work out for us. So just to put it simply, there are 2 possible futures for us. There's one with AC6 and there's one with no AC6. So in the future with AC6, looking at the data and how the games have been, it's probably just going to be the same as the last 4 games. So what it is we'll probably have the game announced. It probably won't be too popular or get enough coverage. And when it does actually release, we'll have a fair decent number of people at the start. But as time goes on, things are going to just go downhill, because the people who got the game just for the brand attachment, FromSoftware created Dark Souls, those people will probably leave first. And as time goes on, we'll eventually just have the same small group of veterans. And at that point, it'll be kind of, we won't be able to do anything because we won't have enough people at that point. Now, in the case where we don't have an AC6, well, the end result would still be the same. So we would have to work in our own way to make the community bigger and better and actually survive. Because as of current, we are not doing that. Our community is incredibly small. It's incredibly weak. It has no ability to affect what the publisher and developer is doing, and we honestly don't have the ability to affect our own destiny right now. We lack any type of real content creation. We have very few community members, and most of them are not incredibly active. And that's one of the important things, is that even doing basic stuff, discussions, talk about parts, builds, so on and so forth, they're not really happening a lot. And if they are they end prematurely. They're too short. They're not incredibly insightful, and there's not a lot of good information in that. And this is a constant trend that's been going on, and it just seems to be getting worse. Like I mentioned before, with the initial version of this episode, it was a bit more on a lighter note, but this is a bit more of a clearer reality of what's going on, where we don't have the people, we don't have the resources, and we're quite frankly running out of time. Who knows what the future holds for us, but it's honestly not looking very well. So what happens from here onward? Honestly, there is no clear answer to that. Right now, we're in a downward spiral that doesn't really seem to be stopping. Most of the solutions are fairly straightforward, but it's really a matter of whether the community is willing to do it in order for it to happen. So, for example, some of the things we would need to do is improve our content quality and the quantity. So it's not only the content that's being created, how much of it, and how well we're doing it. Because as I mentioned earlier, most of the content right now is not of incredible quality. It's mainly just Let's Plays. When we need more things, so we need not just videos, but also artwork. We need streams. We need more events and activities, such as tournaments and different kinds of events. And then we also need to have them done more frequently. So instead of having once a month, if we're lucky, they need to be 3 or 4, maybe 5, 6, within a week. It needs to be on a more daily and frequent basis. We need to try to improve our networking and organization, because I know that's a big weak point. We have a lot of different groups, and most of them don't communicate or cooperate very well together. We need to figure out a way to get people to get together easily so that we can do some of these things better. So get information out easier, which makes it easier to create events and tournaments and have a good turnout. And we need to make it easier for people to find each other and be able to play instead of having to wait 4 or 5 hours. A lot of this basically boils down to the community needs to stop taking a back seat. It needs to stop lurking. It needs to stop pretending that this is someone else's problem or that this will be solved with a new AC game. Because it can't. It can only be solved when we figure out ways to, make it better for ourselves. Because ultimately, that is what matters, is, making the AC community better. If we don't, we have no content, we have no people, and then we have no support and no games. And then at that point, we'll have nothing, and basically the community dies at that point. And I know this is hard, and I know it's difficult. I know I myself am a content creator and tournament organizer, and I've done a lot of things in the community, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of patience, and a lot of times you get frustration. But if we ever want to get out of this hole, we need to make the effort to change situations ourselves instead of waiting on a superhero. Because the fact of the matter is, Armored Core is a game that's now 20 years old. And while it's fairly popular in Japan, we in the other countries, international non-JP, have kind of had to fight it out for ourselves. And if we stop doing that, then that's the end of the line. And there's no coming back from that. So I said it partway through through this episode, probably at a point where I hadn't fully clarified what's going on. But it's important that the community strives to be better, that we build ourselves up and basically do more, because that's the only way we'll be able to fix our situation. And I feel more than anything else that in the long term is going to be what saves the Armored Core community. But it's kind of hard to see whether we're able or whether we can do that, because at this point we've already lost so many people, and we're in such a bad situation that maybe it isn't possible, but who knows. We've still got plenty of people out there. I think kind of just seeing everything that's obvious. It's just we need to stop taking the backseat on this and try to see if we can do something more. And I guess that does it for this episode of the AC Talks on the state of the community, the uncertain future, and what happens next. If you have any questions about this topic, I know I probably didn't cover everything. Feel free to let me know in the comments. And if you're part of the AC community, feel free to share this to other people. Let them know kind of what's going on, the situation that we're in, and, if we can do anything, if they're willing to do anything to make it better. Because, it's more important that we figure out our situation than just ignore it or leave it for something else. If you enjoy this topic and want to see me talk about more stuff, please feel free to subscribe or like. It just helps me know that I'm doing something right with this channel, particularly when it comes to Armored Core. And if you have anything else you want to say, any criticisms, or maybe some input that you want to put about the Armored Core community and the current situation, feel free to just put it in the comments as well. Thanks again, guys. Until next time.